You're listening to the Bear in Mind Podcast, episode 122.
A podcast that breaks it down so you can break the cycle for good. Now, your host, Tara Rama, but you can call her T.
This is going to be a nice follow-up to the previous episode 121 about where I explain the anger-guilt cycle. And I'm going to be talking about a framework that it's not anything new. It's just how I look at emotions, and I created an acronym. And we're talking about FAST emotions, which is an acronym for several different emotions. And I want to explain this framework because it could help you look at emotions in a different way, so that when you're looking at the cycle of how you handle emotions, because most cycles are going to be at the emotional level, and that's the root cause. It's not the behavior. It's really looking at the emotions that are at play and that are being done unconsciously, and how they kind of interact together, how we jump from one or we spend too much time in another. When we can look at this and try to intellectually somewhat understand it, maybe one framework might work for somebody else and this one might work for you. And this is one of the ones that worked for me. Like, I needed to put emotions into a different sort of framework so that I could see what emotions were at play in the cycle that I was creating in my life, and the relationship patterns that I was creating with the people in my life. So I think even understanding the emotions that I'm going to go through in some sort of zoomed out approach is going to give you your own solution. Like, maybe I can think of tackling it this way, or maybe I could look at my emotions this way. That's all I hope, is that putting it into some sort of framework can give you an idea, because I know that when I did it, I started to get ideas. So FAST emotions, it's an acronym. And it stands for several different emotions, and they're fast, meaning a lot of times we feel very reactive and we feel like these emotions are out of control. And the F is for fear, the A is for anger, the S is for stress/sensations, the T is for tired or touched out. And touched out is a term, it's what I would call a slang term, where oftentimes, and this is with parents, they feel like physical contact is too much and they feel like their body needs to recoil from all of that kind of physical contact that they have with their children. So that's it. I'm just going to repeat it. It's F, fear, A, anger, S, stress/sensations, and T is for tired, touched out. And I want to explain a little bit on the stress. It can also be emotional stress, but I'm referring more to physical stress, like if you're ill or something. And sensations is body sensations, things that happen inside your body. So it can be you have hunger pain, you have thirst, you're actually in physical pain, you put your hand near something really hot and it wants to move away. I call these set of emotions fast, and they need to be fast. If you think about fear, and here I'm talking about fear in the truest form of fear. I want you to think about a man running towards you with a knife. A fear. I'm not talking about fear that we feel sometimes. It could be trauma related, but we're generally in a safe place, and a man is not running towards us with a knife. So we want to react fast, and that is so much for our survival. So we have these fast emotions, and we want them. They're going to remain fast. They're there to help us in certain situations, and then in certain situations, they don't help us, and that's when we're reacting to them, and we're not really in a place where we're unsafe and we're reacting. We're yelling, we're blaming, we're doing a lot of behaviors that we want to change in our relationships with our children, with our partner, with our friends, and we're reacting to them, and they are really, really fast. If you notice that, even when you're tired, how do you react to things around you? Your guard is, you're not aware because your body is like, I'm so tired, and you're going to react to probably loud noises. You're going to react more to your children. All of those things, that's why it's there, because it's telling us we need to do something. We need to get away from that man running with a knife. We need to rest. It's trying to keep us alive in the purest sense. And since I was talking about the anger guilt cycle, anger falls into that category of fast emotions. And if you notice, guilt doesn't fall into that category. It's more what I call, and I'll talk about this a little later, but it's a slower emotion, and I call it more a complex emotion. And so the fast emotions tend to be quite simple. It's very simple. It wants us to survive. And there are layers and layers, to guilt and to shame and to emotions that we want to create in our lives, like determination or motivation. Those are more of those complex emotions. So you're like, great, fast emotions. Okay, they exist. They're there for our survival. Great. So what to do about them? Well, a lot of times we tend to think that they're the problem, when really they're there to help us, and then sometimes they're there to hinder us. And then when they become a problem, we go back to those fast emotions and we try to solve for those fast emotions. So when we feel stressed, we want to de-stress. When we feel tired, we think, okay, I need to rest and self-care and a lot of those things. And yes, those emotions are there for us to react and to act upon them. When we habitually feel them a lot and we're not really in those situations where we are under kind of those survival situations where we don't have food, clothing, or shelter, it becomes a way that we think that we need to solve for things. We need to solve those fast emotions. And so when we even have that perspective that we need to de-stress, we need to even self-care, all of that's true. But yet when we're trying to tackle something, especially if we have a pattern or cycle, going directly at that fast emotion can feel like an uphill battle. When we're trying to stop yelling and we're trying to come at anger, okay, I need to manage my anger. I need to control my anger. I need to work on my stress. I need to reduce my stress. All of these things, it seems a little bit futile, like we're not making a little bit of that kind of progress that we want to. And the reason why is that there's nothing wrong. There's absolutely nothing wrong. Those emotions are supposed to be fast. They're supposed to have you acting. And so that's the way they're working. And in this moment, to try to create space there in a situation where things are running fast and you want to slow it down so you can see your anger, so you can stop yelling or stop reacting to any of these, stressful situations, it's challenging because it's reactive. And I recommend that you do the opposite. I recommend that you tackle it from the guilt. What comes after all of those emotions? Because usually there is something that comes after it. There's a slower emotion. Sometimes that's guilt, sometimes that's shame. And looking at what's happening and trying to work at those emotions and have understanding around the slower emotions that come up in your life. And if those are some of those habitual emotions that you have, like guilt and shame, is to comb through those. And when you can go through the slower emotions and understand those emotions and release them, meaning you process them and you move through them so you're no longer kind of staying in some of that guilt and that shame, and then go back and use hindsight to gain wisdom of your fast emotions. And then that hindsight, as you recognize it, all of a sudden you'll create space in real time. I can't stress that enough. Trying to understand things in real time and approaching it in real time in those fast emotions, that's what I mean that's going to be futile because it is so reactive. And using hindsight and understanding why you're angry, why you're stressed, why you're overwhelmed, all of those things. And as you can see that pattern, it'll happen. It'll happen all of a sudden in real time. You'll start to have that space. And it can only happen at the end of that, after you've gotten over the other emotions that might come up, like the guilt or the shame, to comb through that and move through that in a way that there's background noise, in a way that you can then gain that wisdom from those fast emotions. And then that wisdom is what's going to help you see things in real time. And then you'll be able to not have it feel so out of control and have it feel so reactive in those moments that you're not in that survival mode. Now, this may seem like a lot of work, and I'm going to give you one place to start. If you are spending a lot of your time in guilt and shame, it means you're mentally spinning probably a lot in your head. And that is taking up time, and that is actually exhausting you. And the place to start is to release, I call it release the guilt, is to process that guilt, is to allow that motion to move through your body. And as you get better and better at it, you will let the guilt and the shame move through your body at a quicker pace where you can still move forward. I don't mean fast as in short amount of time, but you know that you're experiencing an emotion and you can still move forward. Because you're staying in it, it's taking up so much of your time. It's focusing your attention on things you don't want to focus on, like understanding those fast emotions so that you can open up that real-time space. You can see what's happening and choose how you want to respond in certain situations. That's where I recommend everyone begins. If you're sitting in guilt and shame, beating yourself up, overthinking, that is a lot of time spent. Your energy is spent there, and you can free up that energy to look at those fast emotions. That's all I have for you this week. I'll check back with you next.
Thanks for listening. Listen for a new episode next Tuesday by subscribing on your favorite podcast platform. Bye for now.